Speaking about elective offices now, and I want to talk, the Senate, for example, had 8 female senators in the last administration. Now there are 6. So things have even gone backwards. What is going wrong with electing women? Because it seems with the governorship, it looked like we're going to make some progress in Taraba State. Then she ended up not winning. We haven't really had that moment where we've cracked the political ceiling for women.
Women need to have a strategy for getting into government. Perhaps we haven't sat down early enough to find out how to populate the baseline. Because what happens as you climb up the pyramid, the competition gets tougher and it gets thinner. So perhaps we haven't penetrated the baseline in a way that's strategic and voluminous. So, I mean, this is the beginning of another 4 years. There will be more elections coming up in 4 years' time.
Government elections.
Yes. Precisely. So maybe it's time for us women to look inwards, re-strategize, and make sure we're ready for the next 4 years and not cry wolf closer to the end that there are not enough of us. So this is the time for women to start finding mentors, promoters, sponsors, and an understanding of how the politics work and positioning ourselves for those offices in 4 years' time.
How do you do that, though? How do you do that? How do you strategize? You know what I mean? Because elections in Nigeria are very male-dominated, especially even more so in the grassroots. How do you do that? How do you start forming that strategy? I don't know.
You have to first be involved. You have to be involved. And how do you walk? You put one foot in front of the other, and the next thing you're walking and you're running. So you need to look at your space, look at your community, and find out how other people are doing it and go in there. When we talked about mainstreaming gender issues, I think not only women standing up to be counted, as Ronke has said, you need to stand up to be counted, but you need to have that enabling environment. I know in the last elections, women they didn't have to pay for their nominations form, for instance. If we had gender issues as the mainstream, you'll find that all the parties would consider this as an issue and make it more, make it easier for women to get involved. Because if you want to meet your quota, you need to find the women. You need to encourage the women. You need a pipeline. And that pipeline is not going to just happen on you if you don't put in all the steps you need to have to make it happen.
A lot of people have said that we have way too many issues, which is why maybe we don't focus so much on gender issues. Do you think it's fair to relegate that to the background? Seeing how crazy, using that word very loosely, Nigeria can be. Women
are very, very important in every society. One thing I've realized and have studied is that a child can only grow and get as exposed as the mother. So the nation we're building and the children we're rearing for our future are based on how educated the mothers are, how exposed their mothers are, how willing and open the mothers are. So if we don't start including women in the forefront of what we're doing, we're deteriorating the quality of the generation coming behind us. If a father, for example, is a chief executive and he's married to a woman who is homebound and isn't very exposed and isn't very pushy, the children are going to lean on her more than a father who is absent. So where do we want to see our country and our nation in 10, 15, 20 years? So we don't want to beg the men to include us. The men need to understand that it's imperative that to grow a great Nigeria for tomorrow, we need to educate our women, bring them on the table, put them at the forefront of our agendas so that the society is stronger, is better, is more exposed, and more capable of succeeding. So it's not an option. We don't have a choice anymore.
But it's not going to be harder, seeing as this government didn't necessarily make any specific promises with regards to women. What are things you want to hold them to?
I don't know about speech, but I did read
during the campaign
some of the agendas. So enforcing women's rights was on the agenda, ensuring that women are represented in elective positions, that was on the agenda. There was something around getting a certain percentage of women in the National Assembly and then empowering women economically. So it's not like there are no plans. I think it's back to how do you actually achieve this and how do we hold them accountable? So how do you know that you have succeeded? How do you know that you've taken us from where we are today and improved things? So I think that should really, really be the focus. And then we have a gender policy today, that I think I spoke to some of the issues, some of the main points around the gender policy. We need to make that expanded and let it be more robust. So it's not only about women represented and being represented in public and private. It's about women being represented in all sectors. Ronke talked about works, for instance. So there's some traditional industries that you find women in there, do you have women in all the other industries? Women in oil and gas, for instance, construction, all the areas where we are not represented. So it's about being more robust and letting this thing really expand and come on the mainstream.
So how do you hold them responsible or accountable, sorry, those administrations?
Objectives, measurement, monitoring. You know, I talked about the baseline. You need to know where you are today. You need to know where you want to get to, and you need to just simply track it. It's not anything too complex. It's about simple metrics, about how we want to see, and we need to define our measures of success. So how will we know that we have succeeded in this March? Because nobody is thinking that this is a 4-year discussion. Yeah. We have a long way to go. However, we need to be seen to be contributing in our own time. Okay. And so it's about creating those baselines and monitoring and then tracking.
Question for both of you now. I want to ask you first. What are 2 things you want to see President Buhari do by 2019 that would have made you think, okay, he's done well for women? 2 specific things or issues or agendas you want him to pursue regarding women.
The very first thing that I would wish he would pursue is the area of security. The most vulnerable usually are women and their children. And if Nigerians feel more secure, there's the ability for parents to want their children to go away to school, to be away from the home front, and those are the things that help build a nation. Education is easier, mobility is easier, so security is a very critical thing for me. The second thing would be inclusiveness. Everything we do in Nigeria, I think women should be included, women should be on the table. It shouldn't be an afterthought as in like, oh, you know, we're all complete now, but oops, we don't have a woman in the room. Please, can you pop out there and see if you can find an available woman to sit on the table? I think the inclusiveness should be something that's starting from the foundation, and women should be carried along. And in cases where that doesn't happen, I think women should speak out about it. So those are 2 things, inclusiveness and security.
Okay, just so that I'm not saying the same thing, and he has more options to choose from. I'm a big advocate for education. Okay. I think education opens up your opportunities, and I think between 2 individuals, you give them the same education, the same opportunities, the same exposure, you know, they tend to sort of do better. So I would say educate the girl child, ensure that it is written into law. Every single girl, everybody actually has a right to education, but particularly women, since we're talking about women here, every child, every woman must be educated. And then, you know, I still believe that we do need the policy. So the gender policy around the percentage representation, it's sad that we need to use that now, but this is the beginning of this fight and we need to do it. So if he said 50% of all positions, since we represent 50% of the population, 50% of all positions should be held by women. Exactly. And it's a human rights issue, really, for me. So in terms of fairness, to build a truly democratic dispensation, you need to have all the voices heard. So if you did those 2 things, educated girls, and ensured and put in policy that 50% of all positions be women, will be fine.
Great stuff. I mean, he hasn't appointed ministers yet, so he probably will be listening to you now and taking some names back.
We look forward to seeing
I'll be happy about that.
Well, thank you very much, Ronke. Thank you very much, Aisha, for being here today.
Thank you.
Looking forward to Mr. President and all he'll be doing for us in the years ahead. Thanks for joining us. As I always say, you can join the conversation on Twitter at WhyNigerTV is the handle. The hashtag to follow is Rubbin. You can also visit the website whyniger.com/TV. Remember, you've never seen people talk like this before. I'll see you next week.